Okay, you lot. So we finally have the new patch, which features some new units. But for today, we are mostly gonna be looking at the new unit, MACHINA. Right? Unfortunately, you may see that the frame rate and the quality will be a little bit lower for this video, and the reason for that is because I am recording this on mobile. The reason I am recording this on mobile, especially if this hasn't been fixed by now, is yeah, so the PC client is broke. It's not just you, right? Everyone is having trouble with this, and if you are playing on Korean or global servers, this PC client unfortunately doesn't work for now, but that does not stop us from playing on mobile, right? So, what we're gonna be doing today is starting to play a little bit with MACHINA, right? You may have already seen her skills, but if you haven't, basic attack, nothing special, 75% multiplier, first skill, AoE, 92% multiplier and 40% chance to increase damage for one turn. Honestly, I would say nothing too crazy for this one. Second skill grants all allies increased effect accuracy. So from what I know, this is a new buff that hasn't been released on any units, right? Or maybe it was released on like a very niche unit, because honestly I haven't seen it before. But yeah, AoE increased effect accuracy, and if the target already has that buff, they will receive increased damage as well. Now for the ultimate, this one is kind of similar to Pluto, I guess, and it grants all allies increased attack, and instead of increased critical rate, it now gives increased critical damage, which is 60% extra crit damage. In my opinion, that's very, very strong, right? So for 3 turns, and on top of that, 10% attack gauge to all allies. However, MACHINA will be stunned after using this skill, and the passive restores 5% attack gauge to all allies whenever they use a basic attack or attack skill. So this is sort of like a reverse passive of, I guess, Diana, where she gets attack gauge based on enemies moving, right? So yeah, for her build, I currently just gave her Priscilla runes, right? I feel like they have like a very, very similar sort of playstyle, so yeah, we're gonna run with that. For the Memento, I don't have her signature Memento. Honestly, her signature Memento is nice, but it's just not worth the investment of that many pulls just to get an extra 4% attack, in my opinion, especially since my Sion already pretty much wipes the whole enemy team. So I just gave her the regular support Remementos that I use, which give 1 extra mana to your team, right? For skill ups, not gonna run any skill ups for now. I did level up all of her stat bonuses though. The reason for skill up is, at first I thought that the skill ups would be very, very good, right? But the more I looked into her, the more I sort of like thought how I would use her. I realized that she actually works really, really well with 0 skill ups, right? Because the skill ups don't actually increase the buff duration, right? By the time, like for example, if your previous Pluto team already worked and it was speed-tuned, because Pluto didn't give any attack gauge, she will work even better because she gets attack gauge on top of that. So I figured, like, honestly, there's no need to skill her up in order to increase her potential that much more, right? But yeah, for this video, what we're gonna do is just play around with her a bit in PvE and PvP. I'm gonna make a follow-up video on her probably like towards the weekend or maybe Friday. This one will be sort of like a first impression sort of video, right? To see how she plays out. Later on, once I complete a lot of content, once I have used her in PvP and PvE extensively, I'll make a follow-up video whether you should summon her or not, based on how useful she was in a lot of the content that I played with, right? So yeah, stay tuned for that one if you still don't want to waste her skulls on her just yet. But yeah, let's first of all start with just a random hit and let's see how she performs. So I'm gonna leave it on order for now. This is my regular like hunting team, so Diana into her into Sion. Yeah, so she buffs attack buff and critical damage. My Sion is like 95% critical rate, so he already pretty much crits on all hits, so the critical rate buff isn't that useful, whereas crit damage buff is gonna be a massive boost for him, right? Also, the crit damage boost, I have a feeling, is gonna be like a super amazing thing if you are still very early game and are struggling to have a high crit damage and crit rate, because this is a flat 60% crit damage buff, right? So if you have good critical rate and you have 200 crit damage, the buff might not be a lot, right? But if you, for example, have critical rate on your main gear piece, this one, right, instead of crit damage, if you see yourself struggling with crit rate, right, you might have crit rate on that equipment, and for example, you'll have 100% crit rate, but only like 100% crit damage as well, and that 60% is gonna be a much more impactful boost, right? Okay, so let's go into PvP a bit, and we'll see if we can get some good fights going. Okay, here we are in PvP. Last season I managed to get around rank 30, which was a big increase from the last season's rank 80, which I really like. And yeah, for my team, right, the regular team that I've always used is this, right? But because Priscilla is sort of like a secondary support in this team, and the first 3 units that you see right here sort of must be in a team, otherwise you're just griefing yourself. I figured that I'm gonna replace Priscilla with MACHINA, right, and we'll try it out. This is gonna be way less safe, way less likely to cut in. However, I will be more likely to do massive damage. Now, I don't know how many people I can outspeed here, right, but we're gonna try it out. MACHINA should be moving 3rd. And yeah, since I have gathered 2 of those support mementos, this means that I do have enough mana to ultimate with all of my units, even after using Libertas first, rather than following up after Diana. But yeah, we're gonna buffer with her. We can see that attack gauge is gonna increase on that Sion. Not enough to cut in Diana, but honestly, a Diana moving is not an issue. In fact, it actually helps us because she gives us more attack gauge. And yeah, the damage is gonna be big, I'm guessing. Oh my, yeah. Because with Priscilla, right, she boosts my attack gauge a bit more, but she usually doesn't have any like attack buff, critical damage buff, right? So when using Priscilla, I usually do around like 1.4 to 1.5k per hit. It looks like with her, I was doing like a solid 2.2k per hit. So yeah, the damage boost is pretty big. What is this turn order? Why is Libertas moving last here? But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the cool thing I'm seeing, I wonder, wait, I think Machina's passive procs when I use a skill, right? I don't know, actually, because it doesn't show up. It might be before I take the turn, which means that I'm just not able to see it, right? But yeah, she boosts a bit. Oh, look at that, she cuts in front of Ferency, which is pretty good. Damage, absolutely massive. So yeah, overall, I think with PvP, right, at least for the team that I'm using, I think she's gonna be the sort of like a unit which works better if you want fast fights and if you're confident that you can outspeed. But if you're not confident that you can outspeed the enemy, Priscilla is gonna be a little bit better in that case, I feel like. Okay, Ferency moves. Honestly, as long as it's not Libertas moving, it actually helps us. Okay, it looks like Libertas is gonna cut in, right? But let's see if the 10% boost is enough to get Sion to move. No, unfortunately not. But I think my Sion might have enough attack gauge to cut in before the enemy Sion. Oh no, never mind. Oh wow, that was unlucky. Wow, I just realized how unlucky that was. Oh, never mind, we're back. We are so back. Okay, wow. Well, that helped out. Yeah, I mean, if her passive was killed up, if her ultimate was killed up, obviously I wouldn't get cut because the percentage would be much higher. But yeah, overall, I don't know, not too bad, right? Like a very, very big damage boost, which I really enjoy with this sort of stuff. but also I feel like it's gonna be better for a little bit lower tier PvP as opposed to like very high tier PvP. I will probably explain what I mean by that in the follow-up video on her, right? Yeah, this one I'm losing. Although, you know what? I do want to see maybe a camp pull through here. So, I don't exactly want to reduce attack gauge because Beatrice is gonna do way more damage to me that way. But also, I don't exactly want to give them a move. You know what? I might just have to. Yeah, let's try to... I don't know. I'll probably lose this battle by now. But let's just see what happens, right? Machina moves. I think she might make my Libertas move, no? No, barely. Okay, but now I have big damage. So the question is, oh, but you know what? If I move, Beatrice is gonna like insta wipe. But I don't really have a choice, so why not? You know what? I have a feeling with Machina you are able to make Libertas maybe like your main DP. Yeah, I mean at this point I can't do much. Yeah, I'm gonna have to experiment with this. I don't know. So far, I see some use, but I feel like Priscilla was just a little bit better in that team, right? Also, one more thing with her, right, is now, with the release of her and with the release of her ultimate and her passive, right, there is a new best possible speed set around, right? What I mean by that is essentially Libertas is no longer the best option to outspeed, right? Because previously, Libertas had the same base speed as Ferenc, I believe. I currently don't have Ferenc everything like skilled up, but yeah, let me just quickly double check that I'm correct on that. If I go to the catalog, right, collection, and yeah, let me see. I know Libertas base speed is 139 and Ferenc's base speed is also 139 when fully skilled up. Yeah, what this means is that essentially there is a new best possible speed combo, right? Because previously, if your Ferenc moved, Libertas would be able to cut that attack gauge gain in half. Plus, if you have a Diana on the enemy team together with Libertas, they would be able to outspeed you after you use your Ferenc. But now, there is a new combo, because if you use Ferenc's third skill, you're gonna be gaining... we're looking, of course, at max skill ups here, because that is required in this case. It restores attack gauge of all allies by 8% when Ferenc moves. On top of that, if we look at the passive of Machina, we can see that it also restores 8% attack gauge of all allies whenever any of your allies use, right? That means that's a total of 16% attack gauge boost by using Ferenc's third skill. Now that does get cut in half from Libertas passive, so essentially you're gaining only 8%, right? Whereas the enemy Diana would be gaining only 6%, because if you look at her passive, right, when maxed out, it would give you 24% gauge to Diana, but only 12% gauge to all other allies, right? Of course, if you own a Libertas of yourself, that will get cut in half, and you sort of have to have a Libertas in there, otherwise she will be able to outspeed your combo as well. But yeah, if you have only a Libertas and Diana on the enemy team, you do have a new best possible speed combo. The reason for that is because for Libertas, the fastest Rememento she can use will give her 8 flat speed. Whereas for Ferenc, the new fastest Rememento will actually be her signature Rememento. And with that one, because you are now able to follow up, 5% extra speed is a huge speed boost. The problem with that is it does require a lot more investment. But I'll go over that in the next video of Machina, right? I'll try to sort of like write down all of the notes and make a full combo of that. But yeah, now I'm gonna try to bring her into some PvE content and see how she works, right? So particularly, I'm gonna try to do Abyss Lake, but I feel like Abyss Corridor will be a very useful like addition for her as well. However, this one does require a bit more time, so I will test Abyss Corridor off camera and let you know how it worked out in the follow-up video, right? Okay, so far I'm on like level 17 or 18 of Abyss Lake, right? And what I've noticed is, first of all, the damage potential with her is perfect, right? One thing I noticed, especially in content like this, right? When comparing to Pluto, for example, Pluto has attack buff and critical rate, whereas Machina has attack buff and critical damage, right? One of them is capped at 100%, unfortunately, right? And that is critical rate. So in content where, for example, let's say if your DPS has 70% critical rate, right? Pluto's critical rate buff is amazing, but anything above 70% instantly starts to lose quite a bit of value, right? And the problem with that is, with Machina's buff, critical damage doesn't really have a cap from what we know so far, right? Or at least if the cap is there, no one has reached it, that's for sure. And it simply gives you sort of like a stat which, it doesn't matter what your build is, it will benefit you quite a bit, right? Like, for example, if you have 85% critical rate on your units, right? Yes, Pluto will boost it to 100%. However, you run into an issue where 15% of that is sort of like wasted, right? And 50% critical substat is like a good 3 upgrades on an equipment, right? So essentially, when using Pluto, in case you do have the crit rate gear to make it close to 100%, in a lot of cases Machina is gonna be a little bit more useful than Pluto, right? Also, the damage buff from second skill, right? It's only 1 turn for now because I don't have her skilled up, but once you skill up to 2 turns, that's an amazing tool. Because here's the deal, Diana is another unit that has that damage buff, and honestly, the more I play, right, the less and less I use Diana, right? Because the only reasons you would use Diana is mostly for a little bit of a ult cycle and a little bit of mana, right? Okay, well, let me see this one. Yeah, when you use Diana, right, you use her for mana and you use her for a little bit of damage. The thing is, if you do need a specific like mana cycler, usually units like Ferenci or Shutain is just gonna be way better than her, right? And the problem with that is if you're not using Diana, you're missing out on that damage buff. But with Machina now having that damage buff, so essentially she has 3 different buffs that directly buff damage, plus if you're able to land her first skill on top of that, it's gonna be like a lot packed into one unit when it comes to damage buffs, right? And in my opinion, it's a bit more useful than Pluto overall, right? But yeah, I don't know, so far I kind of like her, right? I do like the damage buff over critical rate because, for example, with my Sion, right, and with a lot of my other damage dealers, I try to go for like 90+% critical rate. The reason for that is if I go for more critical rate, I'm not locked behind using just Pluto, right? For example, if I see that a team does not work, like for example Pluto does not work in a team, I'm not forced to sort of like remake a whole build just to have higher critical rate. At this point, it just allows me more flexibility with a lot of my units, right? And yeah, because critical rate buff is not that widely available outside of Pluto, it just makes it a little bit easier. Plus in content like Abyss Lake that you're seeing here, right? For example, I now have a card which, let me see, okay, they don't die. Let me show you, I do have a card which, for example, no, not this one, where, oh, it is this one. For example, critical rate boosted by 25%, right, at level 1. At that point, that's essentially like a Pluto buff, and if you do pick a card like that, which in a lot of cases it will be the best card, because a lot of cards simply don't work that well. If you pick a card like that, right, instantly Pluto's critical rate buff has like no value, right? But your, what's it called, your Machina's ultimate buff, right, critical damage, that will actually gain value because now you're more likely to crit with a lot of the units. So yeah, overall pretty good boost. As you can see, because she stuns on her ultimate, she would get handicapped a little bit. But if you run Chloe on the same team and you make her move right after Machina, or you can move her before Machina and just wait for her to get a turn afterwards. As you can see, Chloe will just cleanse the stun with her passive, and you will be able to use all other Machina skills without any issues, right? Although do keep in mind that I'm not sure if it was her the Memento which did that, which essentially like increases speed based on whether she's stunned or not. If you do use her signature the Memento, be careful because you're gonna run into an issue where she might outspeed your Chloe if Chloe was a little bit faster than Machina, right? So ideally you'd want to your Chloe to be moving right after Machina, right? Especially on the first turn. That way she will be able to cleanse the stun right after without risking attack bars getting messed up, right? But yeah, overall, even unskilled, honestly, just for the third skill buffs alone, she works really nice in PvE. I'm sure once you skill her up even more, she's gonna be even more amazing, especially her first and second skills. I feel like lose a lot of value when they're unskilled, right? The damage up from the first skill, which in a way you can sort of duplicate with just a Rememento. There is a battle pass Rememento which essentially gives damage taken up for 2 turns, so that one is whatever. But her second skill buffs, if you are able to get those leveled up, and that I would say that that's one of the best abilities to maybe even level up, but don't take that word seriously yet, right? I'm just testing her out briefly. It feels like, yeah, that might be a big damage boost if you are not able to take a Diana in there, right? But yeah, overall, pretty good unit, very good for speedruns. Honestly, I have never had so much damage boost from a unit before. Pluto doesn't even compare, honestly, just that crit damage alone is able to nuke so many enemies instantly, right? So yeah, again, like whether that's worth summoning a 5-star for or not is up to you, right? But yeah, I'm gonna be testing her a bit more. Overall, first impressions, I would say really nice support, pretty much like a direct upgrade to Pluto, but in order to maximize her use, you do want to have a Chloe in the same team, because you really need to cleanse that stun that she gets from her ultimate, right? But yeah, if you do have a Chloe and if you do feel like you want an upgrade to your Pluto, she's a very good option so far, right? Now I'm speaking mostly for PvE. For PvP, I feel like in a lot of mana teams, she could be like a very good pay to win team, right? Where you're able to like max out dupe, max out all the mementos, all of that. But for a very budget team, she may not be that amazing. But I'll sort of expand on that in the next video, right? Where I do a little bit more like accurate calculations with all of that. But yeah, good for like overall farming, good for PvP. May not be the best for PvP, but we're yet to see that. And yeah, that's pretty much the first impressions. Overall, pretty solid unit, I would say, in my opinion. Definitely a better summon than Ivy overall. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for more videos, and yeah, peace.